And okay, let's hope this works.
Good.
All right, so good morning, everybody. And those who are unable to join us on our Zoom class, we're recording our first lesson, our second lesson actually, of Sefer Yehoshua. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Yehoshua. The book of Sefer Yehoshua is the sixth book of Tanakh. Tanakh is the Chumash, the Ketuvim, the writings, the Nevi'im, and all of the canon of written historical works. And it's the first book of Nevi'im. So Yehoshua is considered a Navi, and he is designated by Hashem, as we've talked about, as Moshe's successor, and is in charge, and he's charged with three things. One, he's charged with faithfulness to the Torah. Two, he's charged with the conquest of Canaan, soon to be Eretz Yisrael. And three, he's charged with the division of the land among the tribes of Israel.
Right.
And he is the fulfillment, basically, of Moshe's yearning for the promised land. In other words, Moshe was unable to go into the land that he worked so hard to bring the people to, and yet he probably knew in his heart that Yehoshua would be extremely capable and more than adequate to fulfill the dream that he had. And tradition often compares Yehoshua to the moon and Moshe to the sun. So that's quite, when we think about it, there's a lot we don't know about Yehoshua, but to have that comparison, that's a huge comparison, because we know what Moshe Rabbeinu means to us and all that he did. And so now we're going to hopefully learn all that Yehoshua did and represented. He is regarded as the author of the Aleinu, the prayer that we say in Shul 3 times a day, Aleinu. And he is also the author of the second bracha of Birkat Hamazon. So when you read Birkat Hamazon, I would like, this is your homework assignment, because I know that all of you will be doing Birkat Hamazon at least once before we meet again. So I would like all of you to take a bencher and to look at the English, unless you're proficient in Hebrew. And I want you to tell me why you think, how you can tell the second bracha would be written by someone who takes the people, Bnei Yisrael, into Eretz Yisrael. So that's your homework assignment, is to read the English Birkat Hamazon and tell me how you can determine that Yehoshua wrote the second bracha. Okay, and the second bracha starts with Nodeh Lecha Hashem Elokeinu. All right, next week we will see who has done their homework, and you're going to tell me why you think you wrote it. The book of Yehoshua deals specifically with the conquest of Canaan. The distinct religious message of the book, something that we see as we go into it and read it, it stresses the life of the Jews as a people of the covenant, and they are seeking a daily kind of a relationship in Judaism with the historical God of their nation. So now they are no longer wandering. They will be coming into their land, and they will be having a very different conversation with God, because they are no longer a nomadic tribal people, but they are going to be settlers in a land that God has given to them. Now, the thing is, I'm going to point this out to all of you because I know that you have sensitivities to things that in our 21st century lens, we often say, oh, that's not fair, or that's not nice, or that's a little harsh. But those sensitive readers who are concerned with the brutality in this book, shown in Joshua or Yehoshua, have to understand, first of all, this is a land that is promised by God to the Bnei Yisrael. And don't forget, it is a story of a holy war that is commanded by God. So I'm giving you a little spoiler alert. It's going to be, it may be a bloody battle in several places for all of y'all who are a little sensitive and who's going to say, oh, why did we have to do this? But this is the history of our people commanded by God.
Rhonda,
Yes,
I have a question.
sure.
There were no Arabs at that time, because this is before
Yes.
Muhammad. Moab was considered Moabites.
Yes,
And who were the people in Canaan?
the Canaanites.
And there was no, just that they were idol worshipers, or
They were
Yes, they were.
They were pagan. It was a pagan people. They did I believe they did child sacrifices. They had terrible, what do they call it today? Terrible social moral rights. Their morals were not of high standards, and they were pagan and idolatrous, and Hashem wanted them out of the country. There were also the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Amorites, the Ammonites. They were all kind of here with one foot in Canaan and one foot in their own country or whatever. But the Canaanites were the main group of people that Hashem said, you will come into the land of Canaan, and it will become Eretz Yisrael, the land that I showed your forefathers, Abraham, and it's going to be yours. And he wanted to rid the area of all of those pagan, idolatrous people. Okay, any other questions?
Thank you.
So while I'm explaining to you that there's going to be some bloodshed here, you have to understand that the command was to obliterate this group of people. And it was historically a hated pagan group, and the battle is only in honor of Hashem. So we have to understand that and realize what this is all about.
Rhonda, that meant not just the men, it meant everybody, right?
Basically, yes, but we'll see how that plays out in the
Exactly.
throughout the various chapters. So there is no evidence that there was a peaceful relationship with the Canaanites. The Canaanites knew the Bnei Yisrael was coming. They certainly knew that while they were on the east bank of the Jordan River, that they were destined to be confronted by Bnei Yisrael, and they knew it would not be peaceful. So we're going to see how that works right away, as we read in Sefer Yehoshua. And we hear nothing of during this time. This is very important to remember, that we hear nothing of idolatry in Yehoshua's time in Bnei Yisrael. It was an age of loyalty to God, and whoever, the God who revealed himself to the Jewish people at Sinai. And we don't have the difficulties with idolatry like we do once we have kings and etc. So keep that in mind, that we're really coming into the land as settlers and trying to figure out how to go from a nomadic life to a settled life, where we now have to feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, work for ourselves, earn a living, and use the Torah as the guideline for our life in Israel. So having said that, I'd like to have everyone turn to the text, Yehoshua chapter 1, verse 1. And can I have a volunteer who will read for us, please? Who has a text?
I can read.
Okay, Zmira, go ahead.
It happened after the death of Moses, servant of Hashem, that Hashem said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses attended, saying, Moses, my servant, has died. Now arise, cross this Jordan, you and this entire people, to the land that I give to them, to the children of Israel. Every place upon which the sole of your foot will tread, I have given to you, as I spoke to Moses. From the desert and this Lebanon until the great river, the Euphrates River, all the land of the Hittite until the great sea, toward the setting of the sun, will be your boundary. No man will stand up to you all the days of your life. Excuse me. As I was with Moses, so will I be with you. I will not release you, nor will I forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for it is you who will cause this people to inherit the land that I've sworn to their fathers to give to them. Only be very strong, losing my voice. Only be very strong and courageous to observe, to do according to the entire Torah that Moses, my servant, commanded you. Do not deviate from it to the right or to the left, in order that you may succeed wherever you will go. This book of the Torah shall not depart from your mouth. Rather, you should contemplate it day and night, in order that you observe to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way successful, and then you will act wisely. Behold, I've commanded you, be strong and courageous. Do not fear and do not lose resolve. For Hashem your God is with you wherever you will go. Joshua then ordered the marshals of the people, saying, circulate in the midst of the camp and command the people, saying, prepare your provisions for yourselves, because in another 3 days you will be crossing this Jordan to come to take possession of the land that Hashem your God is giving you to inherit it. To the Reubenite, to the Gadite, and to half the tribe of Manasseh, Joshua spoke, saying, remember the matter that Moses, servant of Hashem, commanded you, saying, Hashem your God gives you rest, and he will give you this land. Your wives, your children, and your cattle would settle in the land that Moses had given you across the Jordan. Then you, all the mighty warriors, will cross over armed before your brothers and help them, until Hashem gives your brothers rest like you, and they too take possession of the land that Hashem your God gives them. Then you will return to the land of your inheritance and possess it, that which Moses, servant of Hashem, gave you across the Jordan towards the rising of the sun. They answered Joshua, saying, all that you have commanded us we will do, and wherever you send us we will go. As fully as we had heeded Moses, so shall we heed you. provided that Hashem your God is with you as he was with Moses. Any man who will rebel against your utterance or will not listen to your words in whatever you may command him will be put to death. Only be strong and courageous.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So here we have the first chapter. It's basically an introductory chapter, and the first few pasukim of this chapter are really almost identical to the last chapters in the Torah, where Moshe Rabbeinu is saying what it is they have to do, and that after the death of Moshe, that Bnei Yisrael now has to go under the leadership of Yehoshua, the son of Nun. Now, someone last week asked, do we know anything about his father, Nun? And the answer to that is no. So that's a quick answer. And and it says that right away we learn that Moshe has anointed Yehoshua as his successor. The people seem very willing, very happy, very willing to have him as the leader. They understand who he is. They have allegiance to him, and they look to him. It sounds very upbeat, and they're very excited to go into the land. And this is really a transitional period in which the succession has taken place. Moshe has passed away, he's died, and God has chosen Yehoshua. The people are ready to go into the land. And also at the same time, Yehoshua has been formally selected. The people understand that. There's no question on who is the successor. And God says to him that he should, as you saw in the chapter, he says, be strong and courageous. He says that several times.
Yeah.
So now my question is, what's happening here? What is going on? Yehoshua has never demonstrated anything other than absolute fidelity to his master, Moshe. He's never done anything other than complete devotion to the people. And he has been an extremely subservient and obedient person to God. He has exhibited none of the characteristics that we often see of someone who wants to take over authority. He has completely been by Moshe's side until now. And so we see none of any unbecoming characteristics of someone wanting to be a leader and doing whatever it takes to become that leader. So the expression be strong and courageous is mentioned in this short 20 Pesukim chapter 3 times, and accordingly, by carefully considering the context in which it's used, Rashi, we all know who Rashi is, the 11th century French Jewish commentator. He says that he detects that there is a reason why this phrase, be strong and courageous, is mentioned so many times, and that he says it for 3 different reasons. God is telling him to be strong and courageous. One is this, he has to be strong and courageous in settling the people in the new land. Two, he's carefully observing the commandments of the Torah. He has to be very careful with that. And that will take strength and courage with Bnei Yisrael in the new land. And three, he is engaging in warfare to conquer the Canaanites, and he will have to be strong and courageous in battle.
Mhm.
So clearly here, these elements are intertwined, and for Yehoshua's failure in one will definitely affect the other two that he has to take care of. So it's extremely important that he is emotionally bolstered by God with the phrase to be strong and of good courage. Now, it's very interesting that that phrase occurs 11 times
Mm.
throughout Tanakh, all of Tanakh. And yet we find it occurring 6 times in Yehoshua, Sefer Yehoshua only. So more than half of the times that we find that phrase, it is in this particular Sefer. So, but why? So why is that? And we're going to sit, yes. Someone saying something? No? Go ahead. Just say it.
I wanted to ask, is Joshua just leading like Moshe, or is he part of the fighting? Does he also fight, or is he just leading?
Both.
Both, okay, because Moshe didn't fight, I believe.
I know, but he was the spiritual leader of the
Right.
of the fighting.
So
Okay.
Joshua was a little different.
Yes, so
Okay.
don't forget, he's a lot younger. Well, at this
Yeah.
point, he's not as young as he was, but he's younger than Moshe was. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
So we're going to look at the first command of Yehoshua. We read here, what does he do? He says, he initiates a directive to the people, to the officers of the people, and says to go and do what?
Prepare provisions for yourselves.
That's right. And
circulate in the midst of the camp and command the people, saying, prepare provisions for yourself, because in another 3 days you will be crossing the Jordan.
right, correct. Another 3 days we will be crossing the desert. So prepare yourself so that you can be ready when we have to march. And Rashi, it's interesting that Rashi says that this is a significant phrase that is used here in Yehoshua, that the 3-day directive is not the only time we hear about preparing for 3 days. So I wanted to kind of get you to understand something about things that happen in the Torah, recurring themes over and over again. And I want to share with you, let's see if we can do this on the screen. Okay, I want to share with you. I'm going to try and do this. So please bear with me. Okay.
Yep, you can do it.
Yeah, I can. Okay, here we go.
Done it before.
Here we go. Can you see this?
Yep.
Okay, so on the third day.
Third day.
Okay, let's read some different things where in Tanakh we see the 3-day period of time, and let's talk about what that really signifies. Xenia, can you read for us, please?
On the third day, Abraham looked and saw the place from afar. This is
Okay,
the Akedah
right.
Yitzchak.
So when Abraham was going up Mount Moriah, he had gone with his servants and his son Yitzhak for the binding, the sacrifice of Isaac, that Hashem asked of him to take his son, his only son, and sacrifice his son. And he sees on the 3rd day that he finds the place. He sees that place far off. So here in Abraham, something significant is going to happen. And here it says on the 3rd day. Okay.
Mhm.
Now let's read the next thing.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Be prepared for the 3rd day, for on the 3rd day, God will descend upon Mount Sinai for all of the people to see. This
Okay,
is when, yeah.
this is Hashem. When Hashem gives the Torah, Moshe commands the people of Bnei Israel to prepare themselves. He gives them some rules and regulations on how they are going to have to, on the 3rd day, be prepared to meet Hashem and hear the 10 utterances, the 10 commandments. And so they have 3 days to prepare. Again, huge, significant event, right? Okay, let's read this one.
On the 3rd day, Esther donned her royal garments and she stood in the inner court of the king.
Okay, so what happens in Megillat Esther? We know that she asked that there be praying and fasting before she goes to the king, because she is going uninvited. And she's going to make a request of the king, and this could possibly put her life in danger and she could be killed. So this is a very, very important event. She prepares and asks the people, the Jews, to also prepare for 3 days. Okay, now let's read this one. And this should be very familiar to you because we just finished Sefer Ezra. Go ahead.
And we came to Jerusalem and stayed there 3 days. And on the 4th day, the silver, the gold, and the vessels were weighed in the house of our God. Arrival of the second.
Okay. So what happens here is that after the 2nd wave of Aliyah with Ezra as leader, they arrive in Jerusalem and they take 3 days to unwind, maybe jet lag, and then before they go to the Beit Hamikdash and turn over all of the silver and gold and kalim that the king has sent from Persia. Again, another very big event for these Jews who have come from exile to the Beit HaMikdash. Now, so what is it that we see here in the 3-day period? What would you do in 3 days? If someone says to you, you have 3 days to do X, and this is a big event or a big situation, what are those 3 days? What would they be used for?
Well, you have to prepare yourself spiritually and physically.
Right.
You know, like they always say to change all your clothes and wash them and wash your body and your hands and your feet and etc.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
I actually have a question.
Uh-huh.
When we talk about, and I know this comes from Bereshit too, but you know, the 3rd day is when Hashem said, and it was good, he emphasized it a couple times. And is that where, we always said Tuesday, was a mazel day, like to have
Yes.
weddings and things like that. Is this somehow all tied in together with the third day, or just a coincidence?
No coincidence.
Let's say that it is not a coincidence, but
Mhm.
I don't know that this is tied into it.
Mhm.
I think that the 3 days have a different kind of connotation than a creative. Well, I mean, there are some creative things being done during this, but it really is not.
I
Really.
would think
Okay.
those 3 days are time for you to sit and communicate with God and try to be sure what does God want from me? What do we want? What does he want me to do? And just really delve into it very deeply to make sure that you are spiritually and mentally prepared.
Okay. Were you reading my notes?
No. No. That's what I think I would do.
Okay.
I believe you, Beverly.
Okay, so basically that it gives you an amount of time that becomes introspective, reflective, and you are actually concentrating on the preparations of something that could be very transformative. I think here the main word here is transformative, because in each of the situations that we read, and they are not the only ones, those are just a few that I selected, those particular events were transformative for the people involved. And this time it will be transformative for all of Bnei Yisrael as they enter into the promised land. So yes, it's a time of spirituality, of concentration, of preparation, and it gives you time really to put everything in perspective of what your life perhaps will be. Now, during those 3-day periods of preparation, the people of Israel had the opportunity to consider the events of the previous 40 years, the prior 40 years, and to take a look at how different their lives will be once they enter into the new land. And they're really shedding complete dependency on Hashem. They will no longer be provided man as in the desert. There will not be a cloud of protection over them as they enter the new land. And now they're going to be having to stand up on their own 2 feet to protect themselves, to work for themselves, and to create for themselves. They are going to have to be a creative entity in their lives. So this is a very, and I'm going to say the word again, transformative time for Bnei Yisrael. Now, let's go to the next part that we read, and it said in the text that, I wanted to mention one thing, that Rashi says that directive to prepare for, take 3 days and prepare yourselves, was on the 30th day, the end of the 30th day of the yahrzeit of the morning of Moshe Rabbeinu. So in other words, they were not dawdling and they were not wasting any time. He was getting everybody together. They had finished mourning for Moshe Rabbeinu, and now was the time for action. And he didn't want the people to just, lounge around. They had a task. He had a task at hand, and it was going to take place. So having said that, we look to the text now where it says that he speaks to three tribes. Do you remember which tribes they were? Us at 12.
It was
Oh.
Reuven, Gad, and half of Menashe.
Right. Now, what does this mean? What are we talking about here? That Joshua said to these people, remember the word that Moshe, that your servant said to you, that the Lord your God is giving you the rest of this land and is giving you this land. What land are they talking about?
They wanted to stay on the other side of the Jordan because there was a lot of good pasture for their animals,
Right?
and they built homes for their children and their wives.
Okay.
And but they promised that they would, when the fighting came, they would go and fight with Joshua and the rest of the people.
That's right. Thank you. So what this means is Joshua is now gathering these three tribes, and he says, listen, just because I'm the new leader doesn't mean that I have forgotten that you promised to fight with us when we go into Canaan. You will be side by side with your brothers, and you will fight until we have secured the land. Once we have done that, you can go back to the east side of the Jordan River, and you can stay with your wives and children and your livestock and sheep and cattle and whatever. But they had decided that they would like to stay on that side, and therefore Hashem includes that piece of property on this the east side of the Yarden, the Jordan River, as part of Eretz Yisrael. It shouldn't be that those tribes are not part of it. And then it also discusses that the parameters, the borders of Israel are certainly much greater than they are today. Like we didn't know that they were going to take away our land here. Okay, so here we go. The property that we were supposed to have was supposed to go all the way to the Euphrates River, up into Lebanon, to the Great Sea, and way down south. So this was the area that they had to conquer. Now, so the Reubenites, the Gadites, and half of the tribe of Menashe certainly are, have been told that they must fight, and they're all in. There's no complaints. There's no backing out. They are all in, and they are very willing to go with Bnei Yisrael as they cross the Yarden. Okay? Got that?
Yes.
All right. Let's go back to the text. Chapter 2.
Chapter 2.
Yeah, we're gonna move right along. That was really an introductory kind of a chapter where we hear what's going to happen, what the people are going to do, how they're going to do it. We know they're going to cross over into Eretz Yisrael, well, Canaan, and that was like the preparatory chapter.
Rhonda,
Yes.
my comments say that this chapter 1 is the Haftorah for Simchat Torah in Chutz La'aretz and Shmini Atzeret here.
That's
That
right.
coincides with the death of Moshe.
Right. Right. Okay. And on Simchat Torah, we should be very happy that we're entering into Eretz Yisrael. Okay. Again, I would like to suggest to all of you, anybody who is, fluent and proficient in Hebrew, I would like to recommend that when you're in shul and or at home and you're reading the Torah portion and the Haftorah portion, that you read the English unless you understand the Hebrew completely, because you'll see where these portions of Yehoshua come and are connected with the Torah portion. So it's very, very important that you understand where they are. And that's why I always say to you, read the English. Don't sit there and follow the Hebrew and just listen to words that you don't understand. If you follow the English and read it, you just read it while it's being read in Hebrew, you will get such a greater understanding of the relationship of Torah, Haftorah, and all that we have learned in our class and the relationship to Jewish history. Very, very interesting and important. So let's now go to chapter 2 of Sefer Yehoshua. Now, can we have a reader?
I can read. I can
Oh.
read.
Okay, so let's see. We're going to read a little bit of it. I thought perhaps my comments would last longer than they have. And so we're going to go into a chapter that I'm not 100% prepared to discuss, but some of it we can. So let's go. Go ahead.
Okay.
Let's read part of it.
Okay, and Joshua, the son of Nun, sent 2 men out of Shittim to spy secretly, saying, "Go see the land and Jericho." And they went and came to the house of a harlot named Rachav, and they lay there. And it was told to the king of Jericho, saying, "Behold, men have come here this night from the children of Israel to search the land." And the king of Jericho sent to Rachav, saying, "Bring forth the men who have come to you that have entered your house, for they have come to search out the entire land." Now the woman had taken the 2 men and had hidden them, and she said, "Indeed, the men came to me, and I did not know from where they were. And it was time to close the gate at darkness that the men went out. I do not know where they went. Pursue after them quickly, for you will overtake them." And she had brought them up to the roof, and she hid them with the stalks of flax that she laid arranged upon the roof. And the men pursued them in the direction of the Jordan to the fords. And as soon as the pursuers had gone out, they shut the gate. And before they were asleep, she came up to them upon the roof. And she said to the men, "I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that your terror is fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land have melted away because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites that were on the other side of the Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom you completely destroyed. And as soon as we heard, our hearts melted, nor did there remain any more spirit in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and on the earth below."
Okay, stop. Okay, let's stop there. There's a lot of stuff there. Okay, so we're going to see some very interesting parallels in Sefer Yehoshua and a lot of references to the Torah in Sefer Yehoshua. So the parallels of Moshe and Yehoshua, here we start off the chapter with what happening?
He sends spies.
He sends spies. Who else sends spies?
Moshe.
Moshe.
What's the difference?
Moshe.
No, what's the difference between Yehoshua sending spies and Moshe sending spies?
Joshua sent them secretly.
Okay, well,
And only 2.
well, they were sent secretly to also, but what is the main difference here that we find in Moshe's time in the desert, the spies and the spies that are being sent by Yehoshua.
Moshe sent them out to check on the land to see if it was good. And Yehoshua sent out to see how to beat them in battle.
Okay, but,
I
okay,
think Also, it was the caliber of the men,
the what?
caliber, they, before it was one from each tribe, the head of the tribes.
Right,
I think they felt differently than Kalev and Ben Yefuna and the other guy.
right,
I think they were, that Kalev and the other gentleman were.
that's Yehoshua. Yehoshua and Caleb were the two that's, yes,
That it meant more to them than the 12 leaders of the tribes.
okay. So let me put this in perspective for everybody at this point, please. Here we go. Moshe had no intention of sending spies. And what happens? The people say to Moshe, all the princes of the tribes say to Moshe, we need to go to scout out the land. We have to see if the cities are fortified. We have to see what's going on in this place, whether there are lands open to us or whether they're fortified cities. We have to see what the people look like. We have to know who we're going to fight against. They were very apprehensive about going into the promised land. This was the generation who left Mitzrayim, and at every turn, at every place that there was something significant going on, these people were unprepared. They had a slave mentality, and they were unprepared to be a nation. And so consequently, they tell Moshe they want to have spies to go into the promised land, one from each tribe. So what does Moshe do? He confers with Hashem. Hashem says, okay, they don't have trust and faith in me. All
That's
right,
right.
okay, they can go. And what ultimately happens? They actually come back. 10 people say they cannot go
Conquer the
into
land.
and conquer the land, and only 2, Caleb and Yehoshua, have a positive report. And what does that get them? What does that
Another
get?
40 years in the desert, walking around
It gets them 40 years in the desert, and
till they all die.
the generation of the desert died before they can go into the promised land.
Right.
The difference here is that Yehoshua picks 2 spies. He wants them to go and to make sure what kind of place they're going to come across first. He knows that Jericho, is the first walled city that they will encounter once they cross the Jordan.
Right.
And before they cross the Jordan, there's no question. There's no question of what they find will not influence the fact that they are going into the Eretz Yisrael. It's a done deal. But what he wants to know is how strong and fortified this city is and what they will be up against.
Mhm.
So the 2 spies, we don't, I don't have their names. We don't have their names, but
Somebody's in the background. They need to shut up.
Okay, Lori, could you just mute yourself, please?
Sorry, okay.
I'm sorry.
Whoever's talking.
Yeah. if you would just mute yourself, Lori.
I have to mute myself. Okay,
Okay.
sorry.
That's okay. So what we find here is that the two spies get to the walled city. They go in when the gates are open.
She can't hear me.
All right, we can hear you, Lori.
Oh,
Lori,
you
you're not
can.
muted.
yeah,
Oh,
Now you're muted.
okay,
Oh,
thank you.
Now you're not muted. Now you're muted. Make up your mind.
All right, so what we
I
find
love you,
here
Lori.
is that, remember the city of Yehoshua that not too long ago we just read about, the walled city and the gates in it, that the gates were open during the day, they closed at
Mhm.
night to
Mhm.
protect the
Ezra.
city. Okay, remember all that? Well,
Yeah.
this was the general way that walled cities operated. The gates were open, merchants could come in, people could go out to do work. And at the end of the day, at sunset, the gates were closed. So the spies enter into the city. And who hears about these spies but the king of Jericho? And he says, he finds out that they have gone to
Rahab's
Rahab.
house.
Rahab. Now, what profession was Rahab?
She was a prostitute, a harlot, they said.
That's
Right.
right. And so she
Right.
when they went to her house, it was some type of an inn, some type of a house where you could maybe get a meal and possibly other delights. And so
Delights?
delights. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, Rhonda.
Well, maybe they had Wi-Fi and you could get other channels,
Yeah,
TV,
okay.
whatever. So, okay, so they come to Rahab's place, wherever she is located in the city. And
She's by the wall.
okay,
Yes,
yes,
they've already crossed, they're there.
they're there.
They're not
These,
still, okay.
no, the people are still on the other side of
Oh,
the
okay.
Jordan. They have not crossed over.
Okay.
They
There's the
sent
two.
spies, just these two guys. And she says to them, what? What does she say to them?
That the people know that Hashem is with the Israelites and they're gonna conquer the land. And the
Okay.
people are afraid already. They're shaking in their boots, so to speak.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. She and possibly all of the Canaanites have heard of the God of Israel. They have heard of the miracles that he has performed and that he is someone to be reckoned with, and that they know that Bnei Yisrael is protected by God. So they are not happy that the Bnei Yisrael is sitting right across the river from them. And it also gives us a reference, which I feel that we should note, that the people of Bnei Yisrael are sitting on the land that were of the two kings, Sichon and Og.
Og.
Now, does anyone remember these two kings from the Torah?
Sure.
Anybody? What happened with Sichon and Og? Who were they?
They were fighting against Abraham, weren't they?
Not Abraham. They
No,
fought against
David.
Moshe.
No, not David.
They fought against Moshe just recently.
Oh, Moshe.
They were the kings of where Jordan is today, and the property of the kings, the two kings.
Okay.
So
It's interesting that they actually name her. I mean, they didn't just say some prostitute. They actually gave her a name.
Well, they,
which is quite an honor. Do you think that that's because she spoke so highly and, and protected these
She
spies?
helps them. She helps them.
well, she is very, very protective of the spies. She is very happy to help the spies. And when she says to the king's men, when they come to knocking at her door, we understand the spies are here. She says, no, 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 go chase them. Hurry, hurry.
They
go
left,
Chase
yeah.
them. They went into the hills of the land. Go get them because you know the land. She tells the spies, if you leave now, you'll be caught and killed. So stay here and I will tell them that you have left. Now, not only does she act protectively of the spies, because she knows the B'nai Israel has the God of Israel, and she certainly tells them that she has heard of the God of Israel. There is, I don't usually discuss a lot of midrash because I feel people sometimes hear midrash and ascribe it to text. And that often can lead to trouble. And so I've sort of keep much of my learning away from midrash. However, I thought that this was an interesting midrash because she seems so knowledgeable about God. The midrash is, and remember, midrash is story, is legend. It is not text. This is not in the text of Yehoshua. So, but I will share this with you before we close for the day. It is said that she reforms her profession. She gives it up in the name of Hashem. She converts to Judaism, and that she becomes the wife of Yehoshua.
Sure.
Now, that is
Amazing.
midrash.
Amazing.
However, very possibly, because she is named and because she is a prominent character in the text, it could be maybe she did convert, maybe she did become part of B'nai Israel, but she is a significant player right at the beginning here. Having said that, very interesting little tidbit, which is story, a legend, not text. I think we'll conclude here for the day. What is your homework assignment?
Forgot already.
To go and read the English Birkat Hamazon and tell me
Yes.
why the second bracha in Birkat Hamazon is attributed to Yehoshua.
Yehoshua. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you, Rhonda.
have a good day. Have a
You
good
too.
rest of your week. Have a Shabbat Shalom and everyone
Shabbat
be
Shalom.
healthy.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat
Take care.
Shalom.
Take care.
Rhonda,
Bye.
Rhonda,
Oh,
Rhonda,
Thank you.
Rhonda.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you think that the 3 days that the reforms deliver?
Wait a minute. I'm gonna try. Yeah, don't go. So.
I'm not.